Same car, same scale, different brands. Which one's best? Let's dive in and do a thorough side-by-side comparison and declare a winner of Spark versus Minichamps. G'day everyone. These two models are of the same race car in 1/43rd scale, the Alpine A522 driven by Fernando Alonso in 2022. They are from different races, so there is a slight difference in specification between the two. The Minichamps version is from the Australian Grand Prix, and the Spark version is from the Monaco Grand Prix, which was a wet race, thus the rain tyres. They're both resin cast models. Dimensionally, they are almost bang on identical. I'm going to award a point to each brand here, but for very different reasons. I like the stackable cases of the Minichamps. That's always a great thing for people who are wanting to display multiple models vertically because they lock in and are quite stable. Now you can still stack the Spark models on top of each other, but the cases don't lock in like the Minichamps do. On the other side of the coin though, I far prefer the plinth or the display base that the Spark models are on. I think the plain grey allows the model to stand out, whereas Minichamps and their checkered flag base very good for race cars, but the model can sometimes get a bit lost on it. In isolation, the models look very similar, but when you get down close to the paintwork, the metallic flake in the blue on the Minichamps appears to be finer. And I think overall the decoration, the decals are much more vibrant and clear on the Minichamps. But it's very subtle, and it's only when you place them side by side that you really notice that there's a difference. But I'll give the point just to Minichamps. The models are from different races, so the Monaco version here for Spark has got some extra vents on top of the side pods. But when we look at the panel gaps, particularly around the engine cover and towards the rear of the body, they're quite big on the Spark, whereas the Minichamps, they're a little bit finer. The overall shape of the models is very similar, but I'll have to give the point to Minichamps. Again, only just. The front wings are very similar shape, both made of plastic. The Spark version has got some extra venting and detail underneath and around the edges, and it's also got a bit of a carbon finish on it, whereas the Minichamps doesn't have that. There's nothing wrong with the Minichamps front wing, but the Spark one is better. So front wing, Spark gets the point. Spark and Minichamps have been doing really good tyres for quite a while now, and there's no difference on this. The slicks on the Minichamps is really good, and again Spark have done an excellent job of the treaded tyres on their version. The wheels themselves on the Spark, they're more of a satin finish, whereas it's a bit more of a semi-gloss on the Minichamps. Now, don't know which one's actually correct because there's a mixture of photos on the internet that could prove either of these right or wrong. And in both cases, the models have got colour-coordinated wheel nuts. There's red on the left and sort of a greeny blue on the right. I can't split this to say one's better than the other, so we'll give them each a point for wheels and tyres. The shape of the floor and the detail that both have incorporated around the edges and the barge boards is actually very similar. I think the Minichamps has got a little bit better looking carbon fibre effect on their model, but on the Spark what I really like is they've added these floor struts. So I'm going to have to give them both a point here. Front suspension, the wishbones on both models are very similar. It looks like they're made from photo etch with carbon decoration, and when just looking at the suspension arms, not much between them. But the point is going to go to Minichamps because they've got carbon decoration on these inner fairings, whereas on the Spark, it's just black plastic. Really hard to see in here. There is different helmet design between the two races. I think the belt detail is a little bit better on the Spark, but I think the shape of the driver is a little bit better on the Minichamps. Both of them have got a lot of really fine detail in here, and it's a shame that you've got to get up close with a magnifying glass to be able to see it. But again, can't separate these. We'll give them a point each. As far as the overall cockpit area is concerned, the two models have got very different steering wheels. The Spark one has got far more detail than the Minichamps version. The aerials on the nose of the car are really fine in both cases, can't split that. Similarly, the halo on both machines is basically the same. I think the Spark steering wheel does look better just because it's got more detail, but having said that, the Minichamps windscreen itself is really nice and thin, whereas it's a little bit clunky on the Spark. So again, we're going to give them a point each here. Moving back to the rear suspension and the exhaust detail, again, very, very similar. Each has got a little bit of a better or worse element than the other. I think the Spark looks better in the wishbone area than the Minichamps because they've got a similar effect that they've used on the front, whereas the rear suspension on the Minichamps is plastic with a texture molded into it. However, the Minichamps has got the curved exhaust, which I believe is more correct than what's on the Spark. Yet again, we'll have to give them a point each. The models have got different shaped wings for the two different races they were competing in, and overall I think the quality of the wing itself is very similar between each. What is different though is the DRS. On the Spark, it's a moulded piece of plastic with some texture in it and some shape to it, whereas on the Minichamps it's a finer photo etch piece with some colouring in it. I don't know which one I prefer. Sorry everyone, we're going to give it one each again. The underside, again, I'm going to have to give each of these 1 point each, but again for very different reasons. Under the Minichamps, they've got a coloured plank and they've got carbon texture, so that's a plus. Whereas on the Spark, it's just flat black. But on the Minichamps, where the front wishbone plate attaches, that's all exposed, and also some of the mounting of the nose is visible. Underneath the Spark, they've done a much better job of concealing that. Before we total all of this up, we need to talk about pricing. The retail price, not the price I paid, but the retail prices the Australian distributor was selling them for. And that's $135 Australian for the Spark and $170 for the Minichamps, which is just crazy for 43rd scale. It's no wonder they had to have a massive sale because this stuff doesn't move at those prices. So, the winner. If I'm judging purely on the model, in my opinion, the Minichamps is fractionally better overall than the Spark, but it's close. When factoring in the retail price, you'd have to say the Spark wins because it offers basically the same model for less money. But they both blow a Bburago diecast out of the water on every level, other than price. I do plan to do more comparison videos. I have a couple of McLaren, so if you want to see how a Spark resin cast stacks up against a Bburago diecast, subscribe to the channel or go watch this video about some Red Bulls. Cheers.